I think we are waiting for just two more presenters to join the call, and then we can begin to present.
Hi, Irene, you can hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We'll wait for the two presenters and then you can take over the meeting. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, wonderful. Okay. Hi, Susan. I'll just confirm if the rest have joined us. So if I call out your name, just confirm to me that you have joined the call. Pamela, Tony, are you with us? Lala Ngwenya, are you with us? Okay. Boy, I think I see Boy Checo.
Yes, I am here. Hi.
Okay. Joyce Bazira is also present. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Wonderful. Okay, we'll wait for Lala to join us in a little bit.
I see Pamela.
Yeah, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Lala is here now, Irene.
Lala is here? Okay, great. Lala, welcome. Welcome.
Hi, I'm here.
Perfect. All right. I think
Thank you.
we can begin then. Thank you all for joining us for this session on how to pitch. Susan and the Miss are going to take us through the session. So without further ado, Susan, take over the session.
Thank you, Irene. I couldn't quite hear you there, but
Sorry,
thank you.
sorry about that.
I couldn't quite hear your last comments. Yes, so I take it we are ready to go.
We are ready to begin. Yes, so over to you.
Okay, so are we starting the session now?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this exciting session on how to pitch. This is a fantastic opportunity that we have this afternoon to share. Well, I suppose it's this afternoon from where I am sitting. I know that maybe there are others who are joining us in this evening or morning. That is the beauty of digital platforms. They allow you to crisscross not only space but also time. My name is Susan Makore. I am geographically located in Harare in Zimbabwe. I am a coach for the Women in News program. I am also the country lead for Zimbabwe as a territory. My day job is, an evening job sometimes, is being the CEO of AWiM Communications, which is a multimedia house in Zimbabwe. I am here trying to do a very easy task, easy in the sense that I am moderating a session with 4 powerful women. And I also know that just from the excitement that has been there online, the amount of questions that have already come in, I know that there is great excitement this afternoon in terms of this session. And I am very confident that the 4 ladies that are going to take us through this training workshop will present amazing ideas that we can all find useful. What I will do before I go into the objectives of this training session is to allow a minute to a minute and a half to each of the presenters that are here to introduce themselves. I know that the amount of information that I have on them, if I were to introduce them, I would probably take much more time. So I would like to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves the best way that they want to be known and to be remembered. So I will start with Pamela. Pamela, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody who's on the call, and it's my pleasure to be here. My name is Pamela Sitoni. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist since 1993, and I have also briefly worked in the development sector as a communication specialist. So I'll not bore you with a long history about my life and my career. I think there's a short bio that you can access online of me. Currently, my day job is I'm executive editor at the Nation Media Group in Kenya, Nairobi. I'm also managing editor of the Daily Nation, which is the largest circulating newspaper in East and Central Africa. I sit on the board of the World Editors Forum, and I'm also privileged to sit on the advisory board of the Women in News program, in addition to Africa Check, and I'm also an active member of the Kenya Editors Guild, where I chair the strategy committee as a member of the board. I'm just really happy to be here and to have this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Over to you, Joyce.
My name is Joyce Bazira. I operate from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Currently, I work as a researcher, media trainer, but also a coach for Tanzania for Women in News program. Before shifting into academia, I worked as a journalist since 1994 to 2010. I also do some consultancies. I also teach at universities where my focus is on media, conflict and peace studies, corporate communication, media ethics. But I also participate in different judging processes where journalists present their story ideas, where they pitch. So I'm very happy today to be part of this wonderful gathering. And I hope to learn a lot from everybody, especially the panelists. I have read their profiles. I have seen their work. So I count myself as a very privileged woman to take part in this wonderful gathering. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Lala, over to you.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you to AWiM and WIN. I see I am swimming with big sharks, listening to what they are saying in their profiles. I'm really grateful and I'm honored. So my name is Nohlanhla Ngwenya. I'm a psychotherapist turned journalist simply because of my love for telling stories and giving everyone a voice. I believe everyone deserves a platform to speak out, to be heard. So that was one of the reasons why I shifted careers. And currently my day job is I'm a programs assistant and editor at Community Radio Harare. And I still try to write articles here and there when I get the time. Yeah, that's all about me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lala. And the final panelist, Boitsepo, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Susan, and thank you to everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here today. My name is Boitsepo Balozwi, and I am the Women in News Botswana country lead and also the national coach. My other job is as a media and communications consultant, specifically dealing with initiatives that raise HIV and AIDS awareness, specifically as it affects adolescent girls and young women. I've been working as a journalist, I remember, since 2002. And I am still a freelancer with the Botswana Guardian on top of the consultancy work that I do. So it's such a pleasure to be here today, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Before we go into our active session, just a few ground rules. Can we all keep our microphones on mute? We will all get an opportunity to participate. Well, maybe not all, but we hope to give as many people as possible an opportunity to participate, to ask questions. The main objective of this workshop is to equip journalists with the key knowledge and skills to pitch for stories, stories to media commissioners, to organizations according to international standards. So the lessons from this session can be applied to the current pitch zone competition as well, where journalists can pitch stories under different categories to win $2,000. So let's straight away get into it. I am going to give each presenter an initial 7 minutes, give or take a minute or two, and we will run through all the 4 presentations. Once we've done the 4 presentations, we can take a health break, stretch our legs, come back, and then we get into the question and answer session. So I am going to just do a random pick, and to start us off, we can start with Pamela. So Pamela, I will give you about 7 or so minutes to take us through your presentation. And please, let's note our questions. Also feel free to use the chat box that is there to forward, share your question, and then we will ensure that as much as possible, we will group these questions to ensure that your questions are attended to. And this is a training session, so obviously the element of interaction is very critical. So we will ensure that we make as much time for that as possible. So Pamela, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Susan. Are you able to share my presentation?
I had given it to Irene to share.
So is it possible for it to be displayed as I speak?
We can do that. Yes.
Yes, Pamela. Give me just 1 minute.
Okay.
While you're trying to project the presentation, let me just start by saying that I really wish that we were in better times and this was a physical meeting, because it's the kind of meeting that, and it's the kind of session that is best presented physically so that we can have better interaction. But we'll try as much as possible to just make do with what we have right now. So again, as you're still trying to put up the presentation, maybe I'll just straight on look at my notes so that we don't waste too much time. So I just have a few slides to share. It's a very brief presentation because I'm also aware of the fact that there are 4 of us on the panel and everybody needs to have a chance to make a presentation. So I'll take just the 7 minutes that have been allocated. The first thing I want to say is that because of my background as a journalist in what we refer to as the legacy media, I'm very much focusing this presentation on pitching to editors as your pathway to getting published. So my first, the first thing I want to look at is why pitching has become so important in this day and age in journalism. And for those of you who are in newsrooms, in what you call legacy media house newsrooms, you'll have noticed that quite a bit has changed because of the competition. And please just present my screen instead of my face. Thank you. Because of the new media and the fact that more people are preferring to read their news online, legacy media houses can no longer rely on reporting what has happened. Their role has completely changed from just being people who purvey information, who educate people and who entertain people. And they're getting more into the role of people who, organizations that want to make a change, want to transform society, which means that the kind of articles that they publish are no longer reportage. When you report just what happened or who said what, that kind of journalism is now behind us, and we focus on what is it that we can write that will make a difference in the lives of the societies that we serve. Also, I remember when I first went into the media, and until as late as just a few years ago in my own newsroom, we always had what we called a diary. We had a big diary where events were recorded, and when you got in the morning as a reporter, you were given an assignment and you went out to the field to cover that assignment, then came back and wrote your story. In my own newsroom, we officially did away with the diary last year. So we don't do diary anymore. We don't record events anymore. What we do is that every evening before a journalist goes home, they have a conversation with the editor and they look at what they would be looking at to cover tomorrow. So they have to pitch their stories, and then the news editor gives them a sense of direction on how to go about to develop that story. And the same to freelancers. You don't walk into a newsroom and say, I'd like to be a freelancer here, please give me an assignment. Nobody really assigns you. You have to think about an issue and then pitch it to the editor and discuss it with the editor to agree on it. So that's how the media landscape has changed, and that's why pitching is therefore important for any editor and any news organization. Next slide, please. Irene, could we have the slide number 3? The next one. So I thought even before you talk about the story idea that you want to pitch, we need to have some key pillars that will guide us to pitch properly. And it just took me back to a very long time ago in my life, even before I became a journalist, when I was in second year in university. That's when I got my first story published. And at that point, I didn't even know that it was called pitching. But I got a chance to get introduced to the managing editor of a daily newspaper called the Kenya Times. And he asked me, when I met him, and I said I was very keen on journalism because I had been in the journalism club in my high school and I used to write a lot. So I told him I wanted to write for his newspaper. And he told me to go and see him with a story idea. So I thought about a story idea. I tried to get hold of my old newspaper cuttings, but I couldn't get. I would have shown it here, but I thought about a story idea, and I went to see this gentleman on a Saturday morning. He told me to see him at 8 a.m. in the office on a Saturday, and I presented my story idea. He listened to me. Those days we had typewriters, and I had never typed anything in my life, but he listened to me and he gave me a typewriter and told me, sit here and type your story out. So I sat down, I typed my story out, and the next day I was very surprised because he had actually carried that story in full. It was a full-page story. And that is how I launched my own journalism career, and that's how I started writing. from that time, I was very, very encouraged. That's how I became a journalist, really. So I was just reflecting on that and wondering, what is it that was in me at that time that made that gentleman convinced beyond the story idea that I was fit for the job and that I could actually come up with a story that would interest him and get published. And I thought the first thing is that I had an interest in that issue. It was a story about university students who found themselves, who got pregnant while students at the university, and how they were coping in an environment like that, and the kind of support they were receiving from the kind of stigma they were facing. So it was a story that I had an interest in because I was a university student myself, and I related with the matter. I was very passionate about writing. I was extremely confident, maybe a bit too confident for my own liking, but I was very, very confident. And then I had the right communication skills to present my idea and convince the editor that I knew what I was talking about and I could write the story. Next. Next slide, please. So when you're thinking about pitching an idea, the most important bit is how you plan for it, how you prepare to make your pitch. And I think it takes a lot of planning, thinking, planning, research. Please go back to the previous slide. So you need to research your idea, get the facts that you want to present from your research, and research about what else has been written about that issue. Has something else been written about it? And these days, with the digital platforms available, we are privileged because you can actually just do a Google search and read up about whatever idea you want to write about, so that if it's been written about, you're coming up with a new angle and you'll be bringing some new ideas and new information to the fore. And then also, as part of your research, you have to understand the publication or the platform where you want the story published. If you're talking about a newspaper, for example, they have different editions, they have different pullouts. You have to be very, very clear where you want to be published by understanding the platform that you want to publish on. And by extension, as you understand that, you also know which editor is in charge of that section, so that when you pitch your story, you pitch to a specific editor who's in charge of the section where you want to get published. You don't just send your pitch to the editor, because the editor, that general mail for the editor, letters to the editor might be going to the same mail, complaints. So the editor might never see it. But if you know who you're pitching to, then you direct your pitch directly to them, to their email, or you call them and you get an appointment and make your presentation to that specific editor. So you have to do some backroom research first. And then once you've researched your idea, you define your storyline. You actually decide, what kind of story am I going to write? And you be very clear about that storyline. And then you draw up your budget in case you're pitching to an organization that you want to fund your story. And sometimes even when you're pitching to the editor, it's good to have a budget for your story, so that as you're negotiating also the terms of payment, they will understand that you'll have spent so much on this story to just gather it, and therefore they can't pay you less than what you've spent. And when you're putting your figure to what you should be paid, you include your costs. Next slide. Thank you. So now you have your storyline, you have your story idea, and there are some questions you must ask yourself before you make your pitch. And the last question, and I think the very most important question is what is it? What is the story? Then it helps you to focus on the story. It helps you to stay on that storyline and not wander around everything. So if you're writing about, let's just say COVID is the biggest story now in town, but you have to be very clear about what you want to write about COVID. Is it vaccines? Is it the facilities in your country? You cannot just say, I want to do a story about COVID. You have to define your storyline and stick with it. The second question you'll ask yourself is why? And because these are the same questions that an editor will ask you. So you need to ask them to yourself first, have a ready answer so that when you pitch your story and they are asked of you, you can respond because you already have the answers. Why is it important to do this story? Or what do you hope to achieve by doing the story? What will publishing the story change? And what impact will the story have? You have to ask yourself these questions because that is how you justify your pitch. And then there are other secondary questions like, how will you tell the story to achieve the impact? Who will you interview for the story? And what information, insights do you hope to get from them? Which places will you visit for more information on your story? And then, as I said earlier, what platforms will your article be published on? And once you know the platform, then you will also be knowing what formats you want to tell your story in, whether you are just going to do a print story with photographs, or whether you want to do a video story, whether you want to do a podcast. So that also helps you so that you're very clear how you're going to do the story. Next slide, please. My next slide is about the pitch itself. When you're making the pitch, whether to the editor or to a donor representative, a funding agency representative, you start by introducing yourself. A very brief introduction of yourself, but make sure that you play up your experience and your passion and cite some of your accomplishments. You know, as ladies, we tend to be humble. We don't talk up our achievements. But when you introduce yourself in a manner that leaves a very positive image of yourself. And then introduce your story idea. While introducing your story idea, focus on the two primary questions, the what and the why that I've spoken about. Be very clear about why you want to do the story and why you're the best placed person to do it. Either because it affects you personally, or you're passionate about the issue, or you have unique sources that could help you reveal things that have not been revealed before. So talk about your story, talk about if it's an issue that is as common as COVID, talk about why this is going to be unique and why you're the first person to write that kind of story to convince the editor that you have something different to bring to the table. And then if you're pitching to a funding agency, present your budget as well. Next.
Just give me a few seconds to round up.
Yeah, I have just one more slide to go. And I thought I should talk about as an editor because I know I'm one of those editors that have rejected many pitches. So what is it that could make your story to be rejected? The most common one is lack of focus, where you have a windy pitch where the writer does not know what the story they want to tell is. They just keep going round and round and they can't pin down the story. The second reason would be you're not saying anything new. You haven't done enough desktop research to see what has already been published about an issue before you make that pitch. The third one is that you don't have conviction. From the pitch, the editor can tell if the writer has the interest and passion to push the story through. And the last one is when you have vested interests or you're being dishonest, you are trying to write a story about an organization because the organization has paid you to do their public relations, or you're just really pushing somebody else's agenda. And editors can always see through this and they will reject a story for that. That's my last slide. I am looking forward to the conversation at the end of the presentations. Thank you very much. And I just thought you should see this wonderful newspaper that has just women, full of women. It's one of my proudest publications. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for that wonderful presentation. I think for me, the key takeaway was, in your introduction, when you were talking about legacy media and how the legacy media needs to catch up when it comes to technology and so on. And obviously the issues of understanding your area, the research, so that your pitch is not rejected over and over again. Yes, paid pieces for PR purposes. I think those will be some of the areas that we will discuss. We will move on to the next presentation by Lala. I think let's keep our questions, and Lala, I hope you'll be able to share your screen for your presentation.
Hi, everyone, once again, and thank you, Susan. Yes, I'll be able to share my own screen. Let me try to get it up.
Thank you.
Please do let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, you can see it. You can go ahead. It's there, very visible. Oh, disappeared.
Hello?
Now we can't see it.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it now. Hello, is it only me who can't hear Lala?
I can't hear her either.
Me too. I can't hear her too.
Hello, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay. You can go ahead with your presentation, Lala. We can see it, but we can't hear you. Yes.
I think Lala might be experiencing some technical difficulty. Maybe we'd like to give her a few more minutes and
Hi, Sue. I'm ready to go ahead if Lala is having technical.
Since Lala seems to be... Hello, Lala, are you back?
oh, I think she dropped off. We could move on and get back to her once she joins.
Okay. Hi, Lala. Yeah, we can't hear you. Okay, Boitsepo, maybe you can pick it up, and then while I talk to you offline.
No problem at all. Technology has its ways, hey?
So
Thank you so much.
pick it up from there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, Irene, for displaying the screen. As we said earlier, my name is Buitsa Pobalozwi, and I am the coach and country lead for WIN Botswana and a media consultant as well. Today, I'm specifically going to focus on the advertorial versus the news story. And as my colleague initially said in her presentation, these information outlets come from different departments, right? And the advertorial in this case, it's an advert plus editorial. So it's an advert first. So likely it is being produced at the sales and marketing department, right? Whereas the news story is primarily from the editorial section. It comes from the newsroom. So already we know those two distinguishing features about the advertorial versus the newsroom, where it is produced, where the product is being produced. And as you know, where there is money exchanged, chances are it's not a news story. Thank you, Irene. If you can go to the next slide. So this is a sample advertorial on HIV. This is a specific advocacy information piece. This is the kind of information you will find in a newspaper placed in a box. It is in the news pages, but it is within a box to show you that it is not a story. It is not information that can be interrogated, for example, because once that information is in an advertorial box, you can't interrogate it. Bonella, in this case, is telling you what it is. They are telling you that this is the situation and this is what we have, our thoughts about it. And this is our point of view as Bonella, as an organization that deals with HIV and AIDS and human rights. So in this case, Bonella is paying because they don't want this information to be interrogated. They want you to take the information as is. And because of that, we cannot call it a news story, because it's such a controlled environment of words, right? And in this case, Bonella was appealing to the president of Botswana during the New York United Nations General Assembly. Bonella was asking that the president or the team responsible ensure that these specific TB strategic priorities are going to be included in the UN declaration. Right? So in that way, they are saying, this is what we want to happen, and that's it, right? So it's not a news story, because the opinion, it's almost their opinion, their point of view to do with this matter. And also, you can see that although there are many organizations supporting this statement by Bonella, all these organizations are saying exactly the same thing about exactly the same subject. So they are not saying anything different, even though they are an alliance. They are all agreeing on one topic, right? They are not changing or giving a diverse point of view. No, they are all saying we agree. So that can't be a news story. And also, as I said, this information, when you receive it, as it comes in through the sales and marketing department, right? It is information that cannot be interrogated. It's information that doesn't want to be interrogated, right? So it is not a news story. Thank you, Irene. To slide number 3. So in comparison, if you can click the story link back to slide number 3, Irene, if you can click on the story on slide number 3. Yes, if you can just click on that story there, it's a link. Thank you. So if you look at what makes a news story in comparison to the advertorial, look at the headline. The headline says the big HIV debate. So when the headline says the big HIV debate, you already know that this conversation is open. It's a debate. It's not only what Bonella has to say, it's not only the position of Bonella's stance in terms of its HIV advocacy. It is a story because it is opening up the conversation beyond the TB strategic priorities, right? So in this case, you will see from the story that we are talking, in fact, the graphic designer, I'm a freelancer, right? I'm a correspondent, as you can see from the story. I'm contributing the story from outside the newsroom. I'm not in the newsroom. But the graphics designer was even able to see that this is a debate. Therefore, we are going to use a map of the world to show that this is a worldwide conversation. It is not specifically about what one organization or 4 organizations have to all say about the same thing, right? And you will see, even within the content of the story, the sources are so diverse. There are multiple sources. We are talking about HIV exposure as it happens in Scotland from the advocacy organization there. We are bringing it down to the local aspect. What does Botswana have to say according to all of these laws that are local and regional when it comes to HIV transmission, right? You will see a lot of desktop research has been done. We're referring to publications such as the Public Health Act. We're referring to documents produced by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We are referring to the judge who presided. We are getting quotations for the judge who presided over an HIV-related transmission case. And we are talking about, so you will see that diversity, right? That is what we are trying to show you, that a news story by its nature is very diverse. Ideally, it will have multiple sources. It's not just about your company position. And even if it is about your company position, allow us to interrogate it, then it will be a news story. And if you go to slide number 4, thank you, Irene. This is just a summary of the slide number 4. Thank you. The one before this one, Irene, thank you very much. So the major differences between your advertorial and your news story or feature when you come to the newsroom and you want the attention of a journalist, and if you don't want the journalist to kindly direct you to the sales and marketing department to get some rates, you would like to come in with your idea about a news story. It has to be local or regional or international. It has to have some community involvement. It should not be biased to one side. It should have diverse sources or topics. There will be no payment required because it will be a story, right? The reason you are being asked to pay for your advertorial is because it's not a story. It is you saying what you want to say and what you want to put forward in terms of your organization, right? And in terms of a story, you are likely to have readers look at your story compared to readers look at your advertorial. Because as you know, with advertorials, in the case of Bonella, it's an HIV/AIDS human rights organization. So if you don't have any interest in HIV/AIDS causes, chances are you will skip over that advertorial. Same way that when we are watching television, when the ad section comes in, sometimes we can choose to go to the bathroom to use that time instead of watching ads. So you are likely to be read and get attention if you are out of that box. So, and again, an advertorial is produced in the sales and marketing department. It is not produced in the editorial or newsroom. And if we go to the last section, the last page, sorry, thanks, Irene. So if you want to go beyond the box, if you want to make your advocacy newsworthy, then it is advisable that you provide context. Contextualize your point of advocacy. Don't make it all about you. What does it have to do with the community? How many people are affected? Where are they affected? What's the way forward? Do we have a resolution here? You know, so if in the case of Bonella, how many people will be affected by this TB strategy, right? Who are these people who are affected? If these TB strategies are not included in the UN declaration as per the advertorial, what will happen? You know, so if this information is allowed to be interrogated, it will give it context and help it move beyond the box or the advertorial box. And number 2, you always have to be relevant. relevance is so important. A few months back, and even now as we are talking, COVID-19 has been the #1 story, right? So how do you relate to that story of the day? Are you fighting that story, or are you going with that flow? You know, because when we're talking about COVID, how many millions of people are potentially exposed, right? So the numbers can show you why this COVID is the main story. So how do you fit into all of that? And for one, we know that COVID has directed all the health resources to COVID. So in this case, HIV has been highly affected because financial resources are now going to COVID. Malaria has been affected because financial resources have gone to COVID. So if you can link your purpose to the bigger story, then you have a higher chance of getting the attention of the journalist and moving outside of that box we call the advertorial. Number 3, timing. What is the mood of the day? Timing is everything, right? If it's a presidential election, what are the chances that a journalist is going to hear you very clearly? Because the conversation of the day and the mood of the day are all related to a presidential election. And we know how a presidential election takes all of our attention. But interestingly, the US presidential election this time had competition, right? There was COVID. So it shows you that context and timing and relevance are so important when you come into the newsroom. And last but not least, always create meaningful, constant information sharing relationships with journalists. If you are going to be hosting a major event, if you are going to be pushing a major activity, one of the things you must learn to do is take the journalist on the journey with you, so that by the time you send the invite, the journalist has been so attentive to your story, has possibly even seen the corporate social responsibility element of that story, and is willing to put that story in the news pages because they can see the purpose, they can see the value, they can see the relevance of what you're saying. But if you're only going to be communicating with journalists when you have an event, once off email, once off phone call, then you are going to have a harder time getting your information out of the advertorial box. I think with that, I say thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Boitsepo, for that. It's really critical to understand what you are pitching for, you know, advertorial, news stories, the difference. And I'm sure questions may come to say, how do you make that distinction now when sometimes, you know, you may, yes, the story is important, but it doesn't mean that you are not selling something with the story. But I think knowing and understanding the distinction is something you pointed out. And also those differences that, you know, it's okay for an advertorial to just be single-sourced, one-directional, which can be accepted if you are doing a proper news story. Thank you very much for that. Lala, I hope we will be able to hear you now. We've asked Irene to share your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Irene, you can go ahead and share my, thank you. Okay, so my presentation is on, rather it's targeted at aspiring journalists and other journalists, you know, when they want to pitch to editors and whoever may be in charge that they want to pitch the story ideas to. And the reason for choosing this is because I'm an editor. So I know I've also thrown a number of pitches to the dustbin because, you know, you just don't feel it. It's not there. It's maybe you can say poorly presented. So I hope the few pointers that I have to share with everybody will help. So my name is Nonhlanhla, and Irene, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so I I titled my presentation "Grabbing and Owning Attention." We all love attention. We all want that attention. So for your information, journalists are known to be busy people, always on the lookout for the latest scoop. Therefore, when you are pitching two or for one of them, you need to follow simple techniques that will guide you in attracting their attention and maintaining the hold. Let's go to the next slide, Irene. Thank you. Okay, so the first technique, I said technique, try to use a complicated term. So the first technique is, first of all, you need to do your research, just like Pamela alluded to. You need to do your research. Pitch something relevant to the editor or to that particular journalist that you have in mind. You should have knowledge and appreciation of the editorial policy. We all know that each and every media house is different editorial policies, so you need to know and have an appreciation of that particular media house editorial policy. You should know if the journalist or the editor still works for the same publication, and if the topic is of any interest to him or her, or rather to the media house. Does the publication tend to cover that particular topic, or it was a once-off cover? Read previous and how to, to familiarize yourself with certain media houses. You need to read previous publications to have a feel of their technical pattern or their format, like what is their editorial policy, what do they look at, what's their drive, For example, me being a community media journalist and editor, I'm more interested in issues to do with community development, issues to do with service delivery, community healthcare, things like that. So whereas if you are to go to a mainstream media, you find that journalists, they most likely be concerned with the latest scoop and probably something that's sellable, and something that is more like on the national eye. So you cannot pitch something like that to a community editor, because at the end of the day, the community media is all about community development. Next slide. Okay, the second technique, secondly, do not pitch a story that has already been written. Poor service delivery, yes, we know there's poor service delivery. Let's say if I'm to break it down to Zimbabwe, we know there's poor service delivery. It's been written over and over again, from mainstream media to local media, online media, print, you name it, poor service delivery has been written about. We're not saying don't write about that, but we are saying, are you bringing a different angle to something that has been done so many times? So you need to be original and unique. That's the attraction. Media and journalism has evolved a lot over the years and keeps evolving. Therefore, to stand out, one needs to break new ground. Basically, this is what I believe. Storytelling in journalism is an art of breaking new ground on a daily basis. You need to be creative. You need to be breaking new ground. You need to be coming up with something that no one has done, or improving from whatever is already there, but you bring it, you spice it up. You add whatever spices you have, curries and whatever, just to make it more interesting. Next slide. So third one, as the saying goes, first impressions last longer. Therefore, your subject lines should be brief and catchy. They should be snappy. Summarize your story as concisely as possible. Your subject lines should be as attractive as that one meal you cannot turn down. I know I'm like a Nando's fan, so there's no way I can turn down a Nando's any time of the day. So your subject lines should be as catchy and as attractive. After all, don't we all like it when we have a person's full attention? Because remember, what you want to grab the person's attention and maintain it, and get a complete hold of his or her attention. One effective way of making sure that you leave a lasting impression is to identify issues and not just follow events. Give prominence to the issues-based approach. So when you get that, okay, this is an issues-based approach. This is how you then pitch your idea. Next slide. Okay, and the fourth technique is other techniques that can come in effect in pitching for journalists are making your pitch and subject personal. Make an impression that will get people talking about the pitch. By making it personal, I mean believe in what you are pitching. Exhibit that this is what you breathe. This is your life. You didn't read it somewhere or someone told you about it, you know. Show passion in the subject and why you chose it. What is your objective? Do not pitch for the sake of pitching, but for the underlying reason and achievements you hope to accomplish. So what after the publication? Is it going to bring change? Is it going to last long in readers' minds? E.g., you expose corruption in local council or local municipality. What change will come out of it? You know, what change will happen? Like, are you just exposing for the mere effect of exposing, or there's actually something bigger that you are you are looking at? Next slide. Okay, I'm sure most editors and maybe some journalists that read a lot, they know that grammar and bad spelling is such a put off. You don't want to be reading a 5-page document that's for terrible grammar and bad spelling. So you need to proofread your pitch, and do thorough spell checks. Remember, these are journalists who write and read for a living. That's what we do. We read and write for a living. A good command of the language you choose to use is always a plus. Whether you want to write in Isindebele, in Shona, in Swahili, in Zulu, in Xhosa, in Setswana, just make sure that you have a good command of that language. Bad spelling and grammar is a put-off, and you wouldn't want to be one of the people thrown into the dustbin because of mistakes that can be avoided. Next slide, Irene. Thank you. Okay, so now that you've sent in your pitch, it doesn't mean you may have the privilege of being called in to pitch, but with COVID-19 and everything, what if you are told, okay, just email the pitch? You need to check in to find out if your pitch was ever looked at. Was it thrown in the dustbin, or is it still sitting on someone's desk waiting to be read? Always make sure you follow up. Try and get a response for your pitch, because obviously when you wrote it or when you thought of it, when you sat down and came up with the pitch, with the presentation, you had a reason for doing that. So you cannot just give up, and you cannot just let it slide like that. You really need to follow up, and hopefully you get an honest answer why it was thrown out, or if the person had forgotten about it. There could be so many reasons. Next slide, which I think could be the last one. Oh yes, that's me. That's the last one. So many thanks to AWiM and WIN for this opportunity you obey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lala, for that presentation. I'm happy this time around it ran smoothly. Yes, the emphasis on research there, I see it coming through. Issue of breaking new ground, finding new angles, I also see that coming through. And you also mentioned something that is quite interesting about proofreading, that if you choose to use a certain language, then be proficient, show that you have a good command of the chosen language, of the language of your choice. So we will move swiftly to the last panelist before we get into discussions. Dr. Joyce, over to you.
Hello, Susan and everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I will be brief. And before I go to my presentation, let me give two scenarios. One journalist I met after they have pitched their stories and she did not succeed. She said, we had great story ideas, but we couldn't get funding agencies interested. Where did we go wrong? Another one said, this is the fourth time I am pitching for this particular organization. They have always thrown my proposals in the dustbin. I'm wondering what is happening with them. These are just a few examples, but the narrations are from many journalists who always complain after they have submitted their pitch and they are not successful. Therefore, my presentation will focus on some key aspects which journalists or whoever is applying for commissioned work should keep in mind before doing the pitching. The first thing is to determine what your story idea or storyline should be. Before you pitch anything, you need to determine what is the specific issue you want to pursue. To know the specific issue, you need to go into a lot of research so that you can see some issues which are burning, some emerging issues, some challenges in your communities, some topical aspects, so that you can bring out something which will be of much value. If you are not sure whether your idea will lead into a big story, you can ask yourself some test questions. You will use the news value elements to test yourself. You ask yourself, if I go with this idea, what would be the impact of my story? What would be the relevance? Is this idea unique, or is the usual stuff which have been overwritten and over-researched? You also question the originality of what you want to do and the topicality. You also look if it's a new development.
Over the weekend, because it's been agitating me for years.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Joyce, we can hear you.
Yes. You can hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
For example, as the acting executive of this branch at CSOs, where this thing falls, never to have had any interaction with the
There is some
on
noise
that
coming
side,
from
who's in charge of the content.
What is happening, Susan? There is someone talking. Should I proceed?
Yes, proceed. Please, can we all mute our microphones? Yes, proceed, Joyce.
All right. So I said this news values element can guide anybody to determine whether the idea is newsworthy or not. Once you have determined that this is the thing you want to work on, you proceed with the focusing. Because if you do something which is too general, too scattered, you are not going to find some relevant stuff. So, and if figure out what you want to work on right from the beginning will save you time and resources. I remember in some assignments, some journalists go to the field without doing proper planning. And once they are there, they use all the resources they had. They use a lot of time. When they go back and present the findings, the editor said, oh, you didn't bring what we wanted. All the stuff you brought are irrelevant. So I'm trying to emphasize the importance of focusing right from the beginning before you proceed. Also, you need to explain to people who are commissioning you to do the assignment why the story is important to them. In other words, you need to hook them. You need to tickle them. You need to show them why the story is timely, is unique, is significant, and is interesting. Because there are so many stories coming their way, and today with the technology growing, they have all the things they need at their table. So what you need to do is to hook them. It shows the significance of the story to their audience. You need also to show why they should be interested to learn more about your story. Make them want to tell your story to their readers. So that is the second aspect which you need to do. And you also need to show the benefit of the story to their audience. All these aspects are very important because before someone commissions you to do an assignment, he or she needs to know how he's going to benefit. So this is a very important aspect, very important part of your pitch to show the relevance. Why should they pay you money to do the work? Why should they pay you and not someone else? The third part is the methodology. With all the proposals I have gone through as a consultant, methodology always presents a very problematic part of to many journalists. In methodology, there are some key aspects which should come out in any proposal. First of all, you need to develop a plan showing the clear steps you are going to use to carry out the assignment. You are going to say, this is how I'm going to do my assignment. If you are working alone, you need to show funders that you are capable of doing that particular story. You need to show them the story is within your range. You need to show them you have skills, you have knowledge and experience to do it. If you are working in a team, show that your team is strong, is capable to carry out that particular assignment and deliver on time. Also, under methodology, you also need to indicate key sources in your assignment. When I talk about key sources, it means people you are going to talk to, documents you are going to review, observation you are going to do, so that you can get the information you want for that particular challenge or problem you are working on. Drawing the matrix of sources is very important because it shows the person you are writing to that you know what you are going to report, and you also show that you can deliver on time. Under methodology, you also need to provide the technical and the logistical details. Here you will do indicate the time framework, how many days your assignment will take, when do you expect it to start, when will you accomplish your goal. You should also say the format. If you are going to write a news piece in print, radio, television, and multimedia, you need to say. And if you have photos and videos which will accompany the story, you also need to say here. You need to set a deadline, because if you do that, the people commissioning you will realize that this person is serious. But you need to be very conscious. If you set your own deadline and you fail to accomplish, it brings a negative connotation to you. The fourth aspect is the budget and resources. If it's an organization which has announced that it's going to fund some assignments and they set their budget, that is okay, because you will draw your roadmap and activities according to the budget set. But if they just want you to estimate the amount of money you are going to use, that is a very problematic area for many journalists. Some of them under budget, others are too ambitious to the extent that they mention the amount which is a lot. So what I'm saying here is you need to draw the balance, not too much, but you should not also under budget. Also, you need to explain about it, to give details about some resources which you will need for the assignment. If you are embarking on an investigative piece, you need to show that I will use 1, 2, 3, 4 as resources. The other aspect is to attach your portfolio. Portfolio is important because it demonstrates your value as a professional. You should attach the samples of previous works. Put a link to some previous samples of your work. This should come at the bottom of the pitch. Whenever possible, link the writing samples similar to the one you are now pitching on. As a journalist, you have done a lot of work, but when you are attaching the sample of your work, just pick those which are related to the pitching you are doing. When you attach your work, it shows your capability, your experience, your skills, and your competence. It also increases trust and reliability. Also, don't forget to put your contact information, where you will put your name, email, phone, social media accounts, and how they can reach you. So having mentioned these 5 aspects, which I'm sure if someone included them in a proposal, people will get interested and will pick your pitch. Thank you, Susan. I expect more during the discussion and the question answering.
Thank you, Joyce, for that detailed outline. I really liked how you went into methodology, and also you sort of touched on the distinction between an investigative piece and probably a hard news piece. So that is important to show significance of the story as well. Knowing the specific issue is something that all presenters have spoken about. So now it will be very interesting to hear experiences and ideas from the many people that have joined in. May I suggest that we take like a 2-3 minute break, maybe 3 minutes, just to stretch our legs, have a little health break, drink some water, and then we get into the question and answer session. So we resume in 3 minutes, exactly 3 minutes. Welcome back, ladies. They could be gentlemen, I suppose. Yes, welcome back to the discussion. I hope all the panelists have had a glass of water and raring to go. Just to alert you to the fact that there were a lot of questions that were pre-submitted. And what I have tried to do also is to kind of group them so that we can attend to them. So I will just take perhaps the first 5 minutes and be the voice for those that send in their questions. And obviously in there, I'll also throw in my own questions. I think a common question was around the issue of what are some of the best practices when pitching a story, which I know that presenters have spoken to, but people want to know what makes a good pitch in general in order to get grants. And a common one is speaking to how to pitch for international organizations. Is there a difference in pitching for a local organization and an international organization? That is a question that is coming through. I suppose one question that I could also throw in there is how long or how short should the pitch be? Yes, there was a discussion around understanding what that particular media house or organization requires, but is there some kind of a template that is there for you to know how long or how short that pitch should be? And obviously that question also says what details. I think some of the details that we got from the presentations. So Pamela, can I call upon you to perhaps look at these questions that are coming through? How do you pitch for an international organization? Is there a difference? And how do you make a good pitch in general to get grants?
I haven't been on the side of international organizations receiving pitches, but I just want to believe that first of all, you look at the call for you to submit your pitch and understand that call, because what organizations will do is they'll send out an invitation to journalists, to writers to pitch their stories. Some of them will be specific in that call for pitches. Some of them will want you to write about, let's say if it's UNICEF and it wants to invite journalists who can do stories about children, they'll be very clear about what they want their pitch to be about. So the first thing is to read the pitch and understand it, and then decide whether you want to put in your pitch. Just going back to my notes again, if you're not passionate about an issue, don't pitch because you want the money. You have to pitch because the story actually or the invitation speaks to you, so that the idea that you are submitting is something that you have an interest in and you are passionate about. And so when you prepare your pitch, of course, I'll not go back to all the things that I said, but when you do your research and you come up with your storyline and your story idea, it has to be a story that you can present without reading. Maybe that's one way of looking at it, because you know what you want to say, you have the idea in your head, and you can just already envision the story. You can even envision the headline of that story. So it has to be a pitch that you can present without reading. That convinces somebody that you know what you are telling them. You also have to convince them that you are the best suited, you have the best idea to write the best story on that issue that they want you to address. You have to speak to your experience, and you have to speak to what you have read and understood about the issue, and then clarify what you really want to write about or what you want to broadcast about the story. For me, I think passion, interest, and knowledge of facts are the things that will play out for me. And if I was sitting on a panel, I would give you the money if you demonstrated those.
You have been an editor for quite a while. There's a question here that came through. How do you deal with editors who do not reply back when you've sent in a pitch? And I think added to that, Mala on the chat posted it was more a comment that she mentioned, because we were talking about the passion part, and she actually indicates that she'll be quite passionate, but she has pitched several times, and this editor would decline her story because she says here, because she the editor wanted to project her viewpoint. How do you go around that challenge? So those two things: editors that don't respond, and then editors that want you to stick to a specific viewpoint, which you are not necessarily passionate about.
Okay, I know that at some point I probably have been guilty myself of not responding to all the pitches, because sometimes editors do get overwhelmed. So my advice, and this is what I always tell any journalist that I speak to, I tell them, you can submit your pitch by email, but the best way to go about getting published really is to try and grab the attention of the editor in a more intimate way. You know, email sometimes could come in when you're in a meeting and you open it, glance at it, and you say, okay, I'll respond to it some later. And then you forget about it because 100 more emails come and pile up on top of that. But it's always nice to try and get the editor's attention, either in physically, if you can make it to go and sit with them, they can give you an appointment and you go and you pitch your story, or even on the phone. If you can, at least speaking from experience, the people who talk to me on the phone, it's always very easy for them to give them my answer there and then, because you are having a one-on-one interaction. Email can sometimes be tricky. But again, even if it's by email, I think the best way to grab the editor's attention, and you've had all the 4 presentations, I think all of them spoke to the same thing. Focus on your story idea. That's very, very important. Say exactly what you want to do and say it in as few words as possible, not as many words. So somebody asked, how long should a pitch be? If you ask me, not more than 10 lines, not more than 10 sentences, because you're not writing the story. You're just saying, this is the story I want to pursue, and this is why I want to pursue it, and this is why I believe it's important, and this is how I'll go about it. If you can summarize all that in just 10 sentences, you're good to go. And then you asked about the editor who wants you to take their point of view. I really don't understand why an editor would want you to just show their point of view. But sometimes, as editors, when somebody pitches a story, and particularly when you realize that they have an idea, but they're not focusing on that idea, or that the idea that you think is publishable is not really what this person has in mind. Maybe what they are pitching has already been written about, or as an editor, you can see that it's not going to go anywhere in terms of giving you a story that is publishable. Then you might want to suggest to them to look at it in another way. It doesn't mean that the editor wants you to show their viewpoint, but the editor is telling you that this, what you're giving me, is perhaps boring, or it's perhaps outdated, or it's not going to really interest my readers. Because remember, at the end of the day, the editor is interested in a story that will resonate with the readers. And also remember that as an editor, you understand your readership. So depending on what kind of publication or platform you sit on, even if it's a radio station, you know what stories the readers would be interested in. Probably better than this journalist who is trying to pitch an idea. For me, I think that's where you might see some conflict in ideas, because the editor understands their reader and they're trying to drive you to write for them based on the people who read their publication. But you think you want to write how you feel. So there can be a conflict there sometimes.
Okay, thank you very much for those insights. Dr. Joyce, I would like you to perhaps pick up on this issue of international organizations, because I know that you work with a lot of international organizations. Is there a big difference? Maybe you could add on to that one. Is there a big difference between pitching for international organizations? I think here there was even an example that how do you pitch to international outlets like BBC Africa Eye, and also the budget? Could you shed more light on that?
Yes, thank you, Susan. Answer, because if they have set some requirements, they are interested in a good pitch. That is at a theoretical level. But at a practical level, you put a call for a proposal, and you get responses when you call judges.
Sorry, Dr. Joyce, I think your connection is breaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. What I said, there is no difference at a theoretical level, because organizations, whether international or local, they just state their requirements in the call for proposals, and the people get to apply. But at a practical level, locally, you find the applicants, all of them are failing to meet the standard set. So and see what would be the lesser evil. And when I say about lesser evil, I mean, what should they do? Should they be lenient a little bit, or should they be strict and call and announce once again? And to add on how long should a pitch be, in international organizations, they normally want you to respond to 5 questions, only 5 questions, and each question should have 250 words. So you can see it's just a single line. So you need to be as brief as possible, but bring in some relevant issues into what you are saying.
Yes, because I can see that on the chat there's actually a question there. Does the storyline alone drive the pitch? So I suppose that's what you are explaining as well. That does just the storyline drive the pitch, or there are all these requirements that you are talking about? Okay, thanks, Dr. Joyce. This one, Boitsepo, there is a question on the chat from Sharon. She says that I had my pitch rejected once because my presentation of the issue was too simple, according to the editor. So my question is, what in your opinion is the best way to communicate an issue in a pitch? Should you always use jargon and complex language, or is it okay to use layman's terms? And I think as you are responding to that, also think around the question that was raised to say, what do you do if people plagiarize your idea? I think there's a question again from Mala, to say how do you make sure your story is not plagiarized or stolen?
Right. To answer the first part of the question, which is from the inbox, where she says her pitch has not been successful because of using simple approach. I think that is dependent on a lot of things, because even if you use simple jargon, is it jargon that relates to what you're presenting? So as long as you are using the jargon that goes with the theme of what you are presenting, then it should be fine. I would accept simple language as an editor because it's in context, right? It's not simple because you are being lazy. It's just you are not using the high-end language. Even if you don't use your high-end language, the point must come through, right? Because if you think about the 3-minute elevator speech, I hope you know the 3-minute elevator speech, where if you had a moment, if you had 3 minutes and you had to meet the president in 3 minutes, how would you present yourself? Or how would you present your issue? So you must always remember that even if it's simple, it's what did you say, right? Because it's what you say that is going to get the attention of the editor, not how simple you said it, if you know what I'm saying. So I think it's important to always be prepared to say the most important things in the littlest of time that you will get. And then when it comes to plagiarism, I remember being a student in a master's class. I just graduated via Fulbright program. And one thing I've learned is that our bright ideas are not always bright. Ideas already exist. The idea that you are coming with, it already exists to a certain extent. So in one way, you must always be prepared to know that your bright idea is not necessarily that bright, that it has probably been dealt with. So when it comes to plagiarism, though, if you have a real case where you submitted a story and the next day you saw the paper had printed the story exactly or almost near as what you gave them, and you can prove that, then definitely you can take a legal recourse, right? If you can definitely prove that this article that is in this paper is my work, it is my thought, right? It is your thought, your new idea. Then if you can prove that, please take the legal route. Otherwise, you must know that sometimes our bright ideas already exist.
Thank you. There is another question I want to attach to that. When asked by an editor, what's the story? What could be missing in my pitch? This is a question from someone. When asked by an editor, what's the story? What could be missing in my pitch? That's the question.
Right. I rely heavily on the journalism ethics, right? So I constantly want to know who, what, where, when, why, relevance, content, timely, right? So do not forget that it's a holistic approach to the story that the editor wants, so that they don't have to think about your missing pieces. Remember, Pamela had explained, they are so busy as editors that what you bring in must be as precise as possible, right? So that there are no missing pieces for the editor to fill for you. Because as soon as you give the editor more work, whew, good luck, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Lala, I have a question for you here. How do you deal with a difficult editor who, when you pitch, agrees with your pitch, but they give you their own idea as the agent one you must do, and this delays the one that you are pitching? So they are not refusing your pitch. They are saying, okay, I like your story, but before you do this story, this one is agent, can you do that one? How do you deal with an editor like that, seeing that you are one yourself?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and just going back a little to what you said, like someone said, what does it mean when an editor said, what's your story? I'm glad to know that I'm not the only editor who says that. What's your story? What are you trying to say? I'm glad I'm not the only one. So, and that being said, I think as editors, we are regarded as very tough or very difficult. I don't know, maybe we are, but sometimes when someone brings or they pitch their idea, and you can see that this has potential to blow. This has potential to be bigger and and all that. But then there's something they're missing. Maybe the person needs a little bit more time to really work on it because you like the idea so much, or you find sometimes you give them something closer. I think for most of the journalists that are here, you should maybe pay attention to if you pitch and your editor says, I like it, but however, can you do this? Just try and see how it fits into your idea that you would have pitched. Because most of the times you find that your editor then says, okay, do this urgently. I want this by tomorrow. And when you look closely into it, you realize that it actually fits into whatever you would have pitched earlier. They are not being difficult, but in a way they are trying to, to give you a jump start, to jolt you so that you may think wider and broader, because your story idea may be so excellent, but it's lacking something. And maybe the editor feels, okay, if I give her this other story idea to work on, it will actually do something. It will kick in something in her or in him to see that, oh, this can actually fit into my original idea. So I think how you deal with what you call a difficult editor wants you to do something before you do yours. Just see how then you can learn from what she wants you to do or he wants you to do before you do your own story. Just see how it interconnects, because chances are it does interconnect, and it's actually going to be a step into making your original idea more relevant and more exciting and more attractive, and it will blow at the end of the day. So sometimes delay is not denial. Delay can actually be a way of saying, work on it better. This is an amazing idea. This is an amazing pitch, but you need to just give it a little bit more of a push. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Lala. I would like to open up the platform to those that are here. Irene, please assist me to identify those that will put up their hands so that we can give them a platform to ask directly questions. And maybe just to say to the panelists, feel free to pick up the questions as they come. If a question is not directly addressed to you, just feel free to come on board and assist with answering. So those that are online, please feel free to throw in your questions. Boitsepo, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I just wanted to support what Lala had just said about, it's so important that when you prepare to pitch, you understand the culture of that organization, right? You understand the values or the complexion of that newspaper or that international organization. It's so important that you understand their values, right? So that even when you pitch, you are pitching in context to everything around what they stand for, especially when you're talking about international organizations as well. It's so important to understand the culture of the organization. That was all I wanted to add.
Oh, thank you. Understand the culture. Yes. Any hands up?
I think Lala has her hand up.
Mala also has her hand up, so we'll start with Mala.
Let's start with Mala. Yes. Mala, go ahead.
Good afternoon. How are y'all? Thank you so much for the panel. My question was, I know when I first started to be a journalist, I did a lot of casting calls. So I wanted to know y'all's opinion on what strategy to use when you're doing a casting call for a writer or journalist position. Hello, did you hear me? Hello? Do you hear me now?
Yes, you're clearer now.
Now,
Could you
now we are clear, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties, I'm learning, okay? Sorry about that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, my name is Mala. I had an experience where I was doing a casting call for writers. It was my first time, I didn't know what to expect. What strategy should you go in when you decide to go in a casting call that's looking for writers and journalists? And what should your research actually be focused on when you go in there to make sure you are full equipped when you do that Bexon process?
I wanted to understand the casting call. Are you the one casting or are you the one responding to the casting call?
I was the one responding to the casting call.
Right. So basically a casting call is a group of writers being invited to come and put their best foot forward.
Correct.
Okay, so basically that's it. I think I remember panicking all the time when it's so competitive because it's competition. You turn forward. I think the previous speakers have already said this. There are so many factors that come into being noticed, right? Even when it's a casting call, there are specific guidelines as to what they expect from you when you come to the casting call. So those guidelines are always important. We don't like to read those fine details of what is expected. And then when we get there, we panic because we are not very fully prepared. But the best thing that works, especially when it's a lineup of so many people, is to ensure that your best foot is always being put forward, that you are prepared, that you have researched, that you understand what is expected, you understand the intention of the casting call, because maybe the casting call hasn't asked you yet about the knowledge of the topic that they're asking. The casting call is looking for different factors for a start. So it's very important to understand the details. And as you know, sometimes you may win, sometimes you may lose, but if you are fully prepared, that always counts for something in terms of research, understanding the details of the call, you know. So those are very important all the time, to understand the intention so that you can increase your chances.
Thanks, Boy. Maybe also just to add that sometimes it's important to also just look at their previous projects. What else have they called for, so that you go a little bit prepared. I think someone spoke about the culture, because you see that with certain organizations it is about the culture. So if you have an understanding of their culture, it means you are going there with a little bit of preparation. Okay. Any other questions coming up? Lala, you wanted to make a comment, or you had a question of your own? Your hand was up earlier.
Okay, I wanted to make a comment from there's someone called Cynthia Wanshia, I think. Sorry, if I pronounce your name wrongly. I think she says she's from Cameroon. She was asking about. She said I haven't had the opportunity to pitch stories to an international media outfit. Please briefly tell me how to go about it, Cynthia from Cameroon. I think all of us, we are actually guilty of fearing the word. The moment you hear international, you feel or you think this is tough. This is going to be really, really tough for me. But I think, like what has been alluded to earlier, just know, you need to know the focus area of that organization. What does the organization focus on? That way you customize your pitch to align with the organization. Okay, so you can't go to, let's say, an organization that deals with human rights, or or health issues, and you are going there and you are pitching something totally different, and that's not in line with what they focus on. You would definitely get turned down. So the most important thing is to customize your pitch to what these people deal with. What is their focus area? Research more about the organization. What do they look at? What is, like, basically their focus area, so that way you'd know. And maybe just to know that yes, they are international, but they work with you and I, people on the ground. It's you and I. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lala. Betty from Liberia, you had put something on the chat where you just indicated that you have pitched 3 times and you got successful once. I don't know whether there was a question beyond that or it was just a comment. So we can also give you an opportunity to speak more around that if you do have a question or you just want to speak around your experiences as well. Any more questions?
Julie has her hand up.
Yeah, I can see Julie has her hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Julie Agum from Uganda. And when you're talking about culture, I have experienced something about culture. So I'd like to understand the culture in writing about a community, for example, culture of a community. How can you guard against stepping on their culture? And at the same time, you want to get at a story that will actually help this community. I don't know if you get what I mean. Thank you.
Okay. Someone wants to pick up the culture issue to expand on it? How do you
When it comes to culture, right, I think it's even as journalists, I've found that when we engage with the community, it's so important to respect the people you engage with, because once you do that, then you are able to tell the story in a way that is respectable also to them, right? Because I think it's so important to acknowledge that we are also different. We come from different livelihoods. We come from different understandings. We don't all know the same things. Sometimes we need to be more patient with the communities that we deal with. But at the end of the day, it's so important to be respectful to our different cultures in our communities, so that you can present them in the way that will also be representable for them. So I think in that way, you are always going to put a respectful tone of story. I hope I was answering you, Julie.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe we can take one last question before we have a roundup of closing remarks. One last question from the group. Irene,
Yes,
anyone?
I can see Sharon. Sharon has her hand up. Sharon, please go ahead.
Oh, yes, thank you. I just wanted to get more information on the pitching zone for the African Women in Media competition that you spoke about earlier.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Irene, you can give more information
Yes.
on that.
Hi, Susan.
Yes.
I take that question.
Oh, wonderful. Dr. Yemisi, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Yemisi Akumbubola. I'm the co-founder of African Women in Media. Thank you so much to Women in News and to all our panelists for an amazing workshop. I've been listening throughout and I've learned a few things myself. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the people who have attended as well. In terms of the pitch zone, as you know, every year during our conferences, we have our pitch zone as part of the conference activities. And this year we wanted to make sure that that wasn't any different to any of our other conferences. We're lucky this year to have to be sponsored by the EU for the awards. And essentially from tomorrow, everybody to submit their pitches via our event website, which will be sent to you via email. There are 5 categories, and on the website, you'll see all the information about each category. And basically, you can submit either a written pitch of 250 words or a video pitch of no longer than a minute to any of the categories. Everybody's welcome to pitch, on the platform. And our funders and ourselves will then shortlist to 6 finalists per category. So being that there's 5 categories, so that will be 35 finalists. So my math is correct. And those finalists will then be invited for a live pitch, 15 minutes in front of the panel virtually, and to pitch their ideas live. And on the 7th of December, we're going to have our live conference. So at the end of that conference will be the awards ceremony. And during that award, when the 5 winners of for the categories will then be announced. So each of the winners will receive $2,000 to produce their story that they pitched to the panel. And AWiM will be there to kind of support you through that process and provide any links and contacts that you need in order to execute your story. So I hope that answers your question. We'll be sending out more information via email and also via our Twitter. So we're on Twitter at Real AWiM, REALAWIN. And if you've not done so, please do join our mailing list. And Irene, if you can post a link to our newsletter sign up link on the chat box, that would be great. All right, Susan, over to you. I think I've answered the question there.
Thank you. And it came at the right time when we were closing. And I'm sure, and you've even actually, reinforced what our panelists were talking about. You've even given us the number of words required, a 1-minute video pitch. So I suppose that's what it is. You normally get, some kind of structure when it comes to pitches. Thank you very much. I would like to invite our panelists to just do, I think Boy mentioned an elevator pitch of 3 minutes, but this one is just closing remarks, closing remarks of 1 minute each, so that we can close our session.
Okay.
We can start with Boitebo.
Perfect. I just want to say it's been a wonderful, engaging session, and you've reminded me, your questions have reminded me so much of my first time when I started out as a journalist and my experience and that lack of confidence, because I can hear there's that sense of, people are just not so sure of themselves sometimes, especially because you are pitching. When you are pitching, it's almost like you're exposing who you are, and confidence is such an important part of that thread, hey? So one thing I've learned, and I can hear the fear of rejection. One thing I've learned over the years is that a no, every time I got a no, it helped build me so much, because I had to use the attitude that no means I have to grow. So the no means you have to grow. It doesn't mean you are rejected. No, it's a moment for you to use it to grow, and use the pointers that they tell you. If you're lucky enough to get feedback, use those pointers to your advantage. Don't think they're crushing you. They're basically telling you, this is how we want it done. So even when you get rejected, remember the no is a grow, hey? It's a moment to really build yourself. And you will find that your confidence levels get higher and higher the more you get those no's. Sometimes you get a yes, grateful, but the no's are the ones that actually work for you when it comes to defining and refining who you are. So take them with a different attitude and you'll grow with the no's. And good luck to all of you. Good luck to all of you with your future in careers in journalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Boy. Dr. Joyce?
Thank you, Susan.
Yes.
The event was relevant, timely, and it was very appropriate. And there's some few things I would want to say. One, do a lot of research about the funders. When you do a lot of research, it will enable you to know their philosophy, to know their projects, to know what they need, so that when you pitch, you go right to the point. Also, learn how to focus.
Hi, Dr. Joyce.
Focus should be the strategy, and remember to showcase who you are, your competencies, skills, and experiences, because that is what is going to market you and show people that you are capable of doing something which is valuable. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Pamela, over to you.
Thank you, Susan.
First of all, and they would like to appreciate this fruitful event. We learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Sorry, someone's microphone is open. Can we mute our microphones?
Whose turn is it?
It's yours, Pamela. I was just asking for some to mute their microphone. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and I've learned a lot myself too from my fellow panelists. So I'd like to thank them. I think my parting shot to the journalists here, I'd like to wish each and every one of them the best of luck as they pitch their stories for the AWiM award. And I just want to remind you that as journalists, really what we do is we set out to change the world. It sounds like a superfluous statement, but that must be what you think about every morning when you wake up. You tell yourself, I'm getting up and I'm going to change the world. And how we change the world is by the stories that we write. So when you get a chance to pitch your story, have that in mind. Ask yourself, how is my story going to change the world? And changing the world could just be changing the world for a few people, or could change the world for a whole country, or for the entire universe. So I wish you all the best and good luck. And you can reach me anytime if you need more advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Lala? Lala, are you there? Give us your remarks in 1 minute.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank AWiM and WIN for this amazing opportunity, not only for me and my fellow colleagues who were on the panel, but for all the journalists from all over Africa and beyond that managed to be part of this discussion. And I've learned a lot today, and I really appreciate this time. What I think my parting words will be creativity. One thing that I always tell the guys at work is that as a journalist, you are a creative individual. Creativity should be part of you. It should be in your DNA. You just have to come up with new innovations of storytelling. You need to come up with new ways of storytelling, or new angles, even to stories that have been exhausted for the past 20 years. Just be that creative person who can bring it up, and and be able to catch people's attention. You should demand attention. You should grab attention, and you should hold it steadfastly and run with it. And your art, when you hold it, I mean, don't just look for attention with things that don't really resonate with people, but it has to be something that is very profound. Yeah. So yeah, my parting line is statement motto is storytelling in journalism is an art of breaking new ground every day on a daily basis. And journalists, please, if you are used to using the laptop, learn new trades, use the camera, anything else, capacitate yourself, learn new stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think what remains is for me to express my appreciation to a wonderful panel. The four ladies, I'm sure you agree with me, acquitted themselves very well. They've shared the ideas that they have, and I'm sure they are happy to share with you whatever more information you may require. I really want to believe that this particular network is a network of ideas, and it's the beginning of us as women in the media to actually share ideas, to know each other, and to move forward in advancing the cause of women. And when I'm talking about the cause of women, we spoke so much about culture. I mean that as women, obviously, when we write, we also want to be the voice of other women, the voice of children, because these are some of the voices that we don't get so much of in our media. So let's be each other's keeper in terms of ensuring that when we are pitching these stories, we don't forget fellow women folk. So for me, what I got was let's pitch for these stories. Let's write relevant pitches, timely, appropriate. Let's research. Let's know our funders and let's know their philosophies. Let's also showcase who you are. Outline your competencies and your skills so that you sell yourself appropriately. And maybe just to also end with a statement borrowed from Pamela. So let's go and change the world by the stories that we write. Special thanks obviously go to the African Women in Media Network. We have made it possible for us to be sharing, and the support from the Women in News project from WAN IFRA. Thank you so much. And on that note, I will say goodbye, and that's the end of our training session.
Thank you, and goodbye to you.
Bye.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Women in News Twitter account.
Thank you. Thank you.